Hello Yunai, and welcome to the second video in a series of Wild Swans recordings designed to help you write your essay. I'm going to be focusing on the Cultural Revolution part of the book now, so again please make sure as you're listening or reading along with the book, consider what is so wild about Chang's descriptions of the Cultural Revolution. How should she behave and feel about it, and how is she behaving? What is the difference? Okay, so while you're listening, make sure you have the essay question at the back of your mind. When Ning Bao called for everything that represented the old culture to be destroyed, some peoples in my school started to smash things up. Being more than 2,000 years old, the school had a lot of antiques and was therefore a prime site for action. The school gateway had an old tiled roof with carved eaves. These were hammered to pieces. The same happened to the sweeping blue glazed roof of the big temple, which had been used as a ping-pong hall. The pair of giant bronze incense burners in front of the temple were toppled, and some boys urinated into them. In the back garden, pupils with big hammers and iron rods went along the sandstone bridges, casually breaking the little statues. On one side of the sports field was a pair of towering rectangular tablets made of red sandstone, each 20 feet high. Some lines about Confucius were carved on them in beautiful calligraphy. A huge rope was tied around them, and two gangs pulled. It took them a couple of days, as the foundations were deep. They had to get some workers from outside to dig a hole around the tablets. When the monuments finally crashed down amidst cheers, they lifted part of the path that ran behind them. All the things I loved were disappearing. The saddest thing of all for me was the ransacking of the library, the golden tiled roof, the delicately sculpted windows, the blue-painted chairs. Bookshelves were turned upside down, and some pupils tore books to pieces just for the hell of it. Afterward, X-shaped white paper strips with black characters were stuck on what was left of the doors and windows to signal that the building was sealed. Books were major targets of Mao's orders to destroy. Because they had not been written within the last few months, and therefore did not quote Mao on every page, some Red Guards declared that they were all poisonous weeds. With the exception of Marx's classics and the works of Stalin, Mao and the late Jung, whose name Madame Mao was using for her personal vendettas, books were burning all across China. Many books which survived later went into people's stoves as fuel. But there was no bonfire at my school. The head of the school Red Guards had been a very conscientious student, a rather feminine-looking 17-year-old. He had been made the Red Guard leader because his father was the party chief for the province, rather than because of his own ambition. While he could not prevent the general vandalism, he did not manage to stop the books from being burned. Like everyone else, I was supposed to join in the revolutionary actions, but I, like most pupils, were able to avoid them because the destruction was not organised, and no one made sure we took part. I could see that many pupils hated the whole thing, but nobody tried to stop it. Like myself, many boys and girls may well have been telling themselves that they were wrong to feel sorry about the destruction and needed to reform, but subconsciously we all knew we would have been crushed instantly had we raised any objection. I witnessed only one beating in my school. My philosophy teacher had been somewhat dismissive to those who had not done well in her classes, and some of them hated her and now started to accuse her of being decadent. The evidence, which reflected the extreme conservatism of the Cultural Revolution, was that she met her husband on a bus. They got to chatting and fell in love. Love arising out of a chance meeting was regarded as a sign of immorality. The boys took her to an office and took revolutionary actions over her, the euphemism for beating somebody up. Before they started, they called for me especially and made me attend because I was considered her favourite, because she had praised my work often. But I was also told that I should be there because I had been too soft and needed a lesson in revolution. When the beating started, I shrank at the back of the ring of pupils who crowded into the small office. A couple of classmates nudged me to go to the front and join in the hitting. I ignored them. In the centre, my teacher was being kicked around, rolling in agony on the floor, her hair askew. As she cried out, begging them to stop, the boys who sat upon her said in cold voices, "Now you beg! Haven't you been ferocious? Now beg properly!" They kicked her again and ordered her to kowtow to them and say, "Please spare my life, masters." To make someone kowtow and beg was an extreme humiliation. She sat up and stared blankly ahead. I met her eyes through her knotted hair. In them I saw agony, desperation, and emptiness. She was gasping for breath and her face was ashen grey. I sneaked out of the room. Several pupils followed me. Behind us I could hear people shouting slogans, but their voices were tentative and uncertain. Many pupils must have been scared. I walked away swiftly, my heart pounding. I was afraid I might be caught and beaten myself. But no one came after me, and I was not condemned afterward. So again, Year 9, make sure as you listen that you are considering how is Chang describing her experiences of the Cultural Revolution. Does she seem in favour of it, or does she seem against it? And how does this compare with how Mao presented China in his propaganda? Okay, so again, think about what is she saying in comparison to what people should have perhaps been saying. And I also think it's important to note that if you have any uncertainty with any of the words in the text, please make sure you research them and look them up, because I appreciate there's some words in there that you might be unfamiliar with. But overall, thank you Year 9, and look out for the final video on the Reform Through Labour camps.